Charles Bronson, Britain's most notorious prisoner, one of my good pals, a fucking amazing artist. If you didn't know any better, you'd think this bloke was a comic book villain. A man who spent nearly his whole life behind bars. Not for murder, not for robbery, not for running a grand criminal empire, but for being, quite literally, fucking nuts. And far too much for the system to handle. 120 prisons, dozens of riots, hundreds of fights, often against a crowd of guards. And half the time, Charlie's doing it naked. This is the legend of my good pal, Charles Bronson, the man once described as Britain's most dangerous prisoner. Now, when someone gets a title like that, you expect them to have done something monstrous. But Bronson, nah. His crimes are simple. It's him that's complicated. And if you ever looked at his story and thought, he can't be real, strap in. Born under the name of Michael Gordon Peterson in 1952 in Luton, a normal working class lad from a good family. His dad ran a business. His uncle was even the mayor of the town. By all accounts, he was a sweet kid, polite, well-mannered, a little shy. Not the type you'd expect to be wrestling prison guards half naked in a few decades' time.
They were perfect children. Everybody used to say what lovely children they were. Could take them anywhere. We had a great family life. The father, Joe, was very strict with the boys. I used to think he was a bit too strict. But they were three lovely children and they loved one another. Everything was happy.
But something changed for Charlie when his family moved. By 13, little Michael wasn't so little, and he found a new passion in life: fighting. And not the Queensberry Rules kind. He joined a small-time gang, got nicked for petty theft, and that quiet boy disappeared. See, this is where it starts. Every big character, gangster, fighter, legend, whatever you want to call them, they've all got that turning point. For Bronson, it was like flicking a switch. From nice kid next door to bloke you cross the street to avoid. After school, he tried his hand at normal work. Bit of labouring, a few factory gigs. He even did a stint at Tesco's, where I used to buy my best clothes. 2 weeks later, he was sacked for punching his manager. Classic Bronson. Then there was a girlfriend. Didn't last long. He fell out with her dad, smashed up some cars, and boom, first prison sentence, 18 months. When he got out, he tried again. Got a job this time as a truck driver, until he crashed his lorry, panicked, and legged it 90 miles home. The coppers were actually waiting for him at the door. You can almost imagine it. Bronson puffing away, walking in like nothing happened. Evening, officers. But somehow, and this is the mad bit, he didn't go to prison that time. The other driver, thank God, survived. Just a fine, suspended sentence. The universe gave him a second chance, and he lobbed it right out the window. In 1971, the year that the Podfather was born, Michael met a girl who changed his course, at least for a bit. She got pregnant, married, and for the first time, it looked like he might straighten out. He even joined a circus, literally, performing as a strongman, lifting weights, entertaining crowds, earning an honest living. His wife later said he always looked sharp, tailored suits, groomed sideburns, never short cash, because his parents, bless them, kept helping him out. But for reasons no one really understands, he threw it all away. At 22, he walked into a post office, as you do, with a sawn-off shotgun and robbed the till. His take, 26 quid. 26 pounds. I mean, you almost have to laugh. All that for 26 quid. I mean, you couldn't even get around in London today for that amount of money.
Most people talk about Bronson the prisoner, but very few people talk about Bronson the offender. And frankly, whilst Bronson has become almost a professional prisoner, I think what people are less aware of is that he wasn't a very successful offender.
Why did he do it? Boredom? Madness? The thrill? No one knows. Maybe he just wanted to see what would happen. The mad thing is, he didn't even try to run. He was caught, charged and sentenced to 7 years in jail. But he wouldn't be out for 13 because the moment he stepped into prison, something in him came alive. For most people, prison breaks you. For Bronson, it made him. He found his arena, his stage. From then on, he wasn't Michael Peterson anymore. Enter Bronson. His first week inside, he attacks 2 inmates out of nowhere. Solitary confinement. He comes out, attacks another. Back in solitary confinement. You'd think he'd hate it. The isolation, the darkness. But no, he thrived on it. He actually said later, the only place I feel free is in solitary.
And so that the solitary confinement, although awful, is also perhaps better at some level for him than having to manage with people.
The screws didn't know what to do with him. They tried to put him to work, but Bronson refused. Instead, he trashed the workshop and decked the first guard who came near him. But don't get me wrong, this ain't a hero story. He weren't fucking Robin Hood. But it's like watching a bloke testing the limits of the system just to see where it breaks. And every time they tried to tame him, he bit back harder. Psychiatric treatment begins. The doctors thought they could calm him down, drug him up, make him docile. They pumped him full of meds that made him sick, weak and miserable.
I've spoke to him a few times when he's going, they're hurting me, Dave. Dave, they're hurting me in my head, they're hurting me in my veins. All my veins are burning, I'm all burning, they've done something to me.
And he was being treated for psychosis. I think that it was much easier for the hospitals to manage Charlie in a sedated, drugged up state. But all it did was build resentment.
I fucking hated it. So he started protests, hunger strikes, shouting matches, refusing to move. Eventually, the drugs stopped, but by then, he became addicted to chaos. Every single prison officer in Britain knew his name, not because of the crimes he'd done, but because no one wanted to deal with him. He was actually like a human hurricane. Walton, Hull, Wandsworth, Parkhurst, Broadmoor. He was moved again and again. Every governor, every warden, desperate to get him off their hands. By his 5th or 6th transfer, his reputation arrived before he did. The guards would be whispering, Bronson's coming. No one wanted him in the general population. Too dangerous, too unpredictable. So he spent years alone in cells the size of fucking cupboards. What did he do? He trained. Push-ups, squats, sit-ups, hours a day. He turned himself into a living weapon. Other inmates swore that he could actually bend the cell bars. He even wrote a book about it later on called Solitary Fitness. And here's the mad thing. That book became a bestseller. People actually followed Bronson's prison workouts. Imagine that, a bloke locked up for decades giving fitness advice to the public. He was like the fucking prison's Joe Wicks. This can only happen in Britain. He once wrote, "I can knock out a cow with one punch. I can break bulletproof glass. I can throw a man 30 feet. Exaggeration? Maybe."
He's a very strong man. He's one of the strongest men probably in the prison system, even at his age now.
But when you actually fucking look at him, the moustache, the muscles, the mad eyes, you start to wonder if he might actually mean it. At this point, Charles Bronson had gone from a bloke with a short fuse to a walking legend. He wasn't just in prison, he became prison. And the system, for better or worse, helped build the myth.
He's learned over a long period of time that the way he can draw attention to himself, the way he can keep driving himself to the center of the stage, is to fight with staff, is to complain, is to take hostages, is to maintain a very public persona about who he is and why he's behaving as he does.
Charles Bronson, Britain's most notorious prisoner, the hostage years. By the late 70s, Bronson had become a household name in the prison system, not for escape attempts or clever cons, but for his sheer unpredictability. And then came the hostage years, moments that cemented his place in British criminal folklore. You know it's bad when the guards start drawing straws to decide who's going to deliver your lunch tray. That's the kind of fear that this fucking bloke inspired. Bronson takes hostage again. Madman's demands: a helicopter, a rubber doll, and a cup of tea. Bronson's hostage situations weren't about money or escape. They were about theatre. He'd grab a screw, barricade himself in, and make ridiculous demands, like asking for a helicopter, a cup of tea, and a blow-up doll. And the thing is, he wasn't joking. To him, it was fun, a game, a test to see how far he could push the screws before they cracked. You got to picture it. This fella, covered in tattoos, half naked, sweating buckets, shouting down the fucking landing, "Get me a cuppa and a rubber doll woman or this hostage gets it." I mean, you can't make it up. And yet, it happened more than once. Over the years, Bronson took several hostages, prison teachers, guards, even an art instructor once. No one died, but it always ended the same way. Riot gear, chaos, and Bronson going back into solitary. He became both a problem and a mascot of Britain's prison culture. The wild man they couldn't control, but secretly couldn't stop talking about it. And through it all, he wasn't killing anyone. He wasn't running a drug empire. He was just fighting everyone and everything. It's funny, it's almost like he needed conflict to be able to breathe. Without it, he was just a man in a box. But when chaos kicked off, he was alive. As time went on, Bronson became a kind of anti-hero. The press couldn't get enough of him. Every new riot, every demand, every bizarre quote, headline gold. They called him Britain's most dangerous prisoner. He called himself Britain's most misunderstood. And maybe there's truth in that, because while the tabloids painted him as a monster, his letters, and later his artwork, showed something else.
I am not, nor never have been, a danger to the public. All crimes out there are very, very minimal. My dangerousness is inside, not outside it. I could be released tomorrow. I'm making a nice little living out of my art. 36 years in the ken. 21 when I come in. I've only been home 3 months in all that time. Do me a favour. What about my human rights?
A bloke who in between the madness could be funny, thoughtful, and even poetic. He started to draw, paint, write poetry. His work began appearing in galleries, raising money for charities. One art award was even named after him, the Bronson Award. Inside, he was still the same unpredictable force, but through his art, people began to see the man behind the myth. It's mad, isn't it? You got this fellow who used to terrorise prison guards, now winning art prizes. Talk about a plot twist. Who would have thought Charles Bronson would have become an artiste? Cut to 2008, scenes from the film Bronson, starring Tom Hardy. Then came Hollywood. Not many people know this, but I actually spoke to Charlie because we were pen friends. He was sending me art, we were having a right laugh, and then he mentioned to me he was doing a movie. 2008 Bronson, and he had Tom Hardy playing him. He actually said, Terry, I'm going to get you a little part in the film, which he did. So for those of you that have seen the film, you would have seen me pop up. Didn't have any dialogue, unfortunately. They cut it, fucking bastards, but it doesn't matter. I was still in the scene with Tom Hardy. How would I describe the film? It was a surreal, brutal, beautiful film that turned a notorious prisoner into a cultural icon. Tom Hardy's performance was electric, raw, unpredictable, funny, terrifying. Bronson himself later said Hardy captured him better than he could have captured himself. And coming from Charlie, that's a fucking big compliment. You gotta love that. I mean, most people dream of freedom. Bronson got a movie instead, played by one of the biggest Hollywood actors in Britain. And if that's not legend statement, GOAT status, I don't know what is. But behind the fame, the fights, and the headlines was still a man serving a life sentence for crimes that on paper don't sound like life material. No murders, no robberies, no bank heists, just violence, spontaneous, spectacular, and often ridiculous. A man who became trapped by his own reputation. And that's the tragedy, really. He built a monster that the system refused to kill off.
It should be exceptional for a prisoner to be held as long as he has been held for an offence of robbery or an offence of that nature. And in those circumstances, although the state may in very limited circumstances be able to justify continued detention, it's absolutely critical, it seems to me, that there is a very, very careful review of that justification.
Even when he tried to calm himself down, the legend kept him caged. In recent years, Bronson's made real efforts to change. Meditation, art, keeping fit. He says he's not that angry young man anymore. But the system still sees him through the same lens. Dangerous, unpredictable, untrustworthy. So the doors stay locked. And maybe that's the saddest bit of all. Because if you've done your time and done it 10 times over, what more can you do? He's 70 odd years old now. What's left to prove?
30 years ago, he was a failed bank robber. What's the criminal justice system done for him? 30-year sentence. Now that's not clever. The criminal justice system, the prison system, the rehabilitation, it all needs to answer that point.
So here we are, half a century later, the man who became a myth, a story that turned into folklore, Charles Bronson, Britain's most dangerous prisoner. Or maybe Britain's most misunderstood man. Look, I've seen a lot in my time, and I get it. He's done some mad shit, but he's also done his time. He's actually probably done too much time. He served more years than most murderers. The media's had their fun. The tabloids got their stories. But at some point, you've got to ask, what's the fucking point of keeping him caged now? He's not the 20-year-old nutcase anymore. He's an old man with a paintbrush who dreams of peace. If there's no real reason to keep him banged up, then maybe, just maybe, it's time to let him come home. Let the man live out his last few years in freedom, not as a headline, but as a human being. Because if we can't forgive, then what is the point of justice? Charles Bronson, still serving, still waiting. Free Bronson. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Terry Stone Connection. I think it's time that we got Charlie Bronson home. So make sure you drop a comment down below if you agree. Free Bronson. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you're liking, make sure you're commenting, and make sure you're fucking subscribing. Or when Charlie comes out, I will send him around your house. And we will see you on the other side.